Hey cool people, what do hard bosses and eating ass have in common? All the shit you have to put up with. I'm Nick, I'm a he, him, and speaking of bosses, we'll talk about eating ass later, we're going to go over the 5 cheesiest boss strategies for Kingdom Hearts Re: Chain of Memories.
64 slices of
Kingdom Hearts
cheese.
We're going to compare and contrast them, and then decide once and for all, which is the best, which is the Gouda, and which fromage goes in the garbage. Now then, strike the like button, and let's play the only Kingdom Hearts game that definitely deserved the remake. My process was simple. Fight a few bosses with 5 distinct strategies. Those strategies were Sonic Blade spam, Lethal Frame spam, Quake and Freeze, All Zeros, and Fire Raga spam. I tested them against Replica Riku Fight 4, Larxene Fight 2, Marluxia 2nd form, and Marluxia 3rd form. Those names are terrible. Instead, let's call them Repliku, what a pain in my neckliku, Rihanna, because lightning strikes every time she moves, Marluxia, remember when people used to call them that? And
Is that the Grim Reaper?
so, how am I going to compare these strategies? A point-based category system, of course. Category 1, who are they useful against? There's humanoid bosses and giant bosses in Recom, so are they useful against both types or just one type? And how helpless are we if the strategy fails? Category 2, ease of access. How soon can we get the strategy? How easily obtained are the required cards? That sort of thing. And Category 3, survivability. A cheese strat is only as good as its ability to keep the player alive. I'm not trying to end fights looking like black and blue cheese, but Okay, so we'll go down the list, starting with my personal favorite strat. Category 1, Sonic Blade specifically is useful against humanoid bosses. So any pain in my neckliku fights, Organization 13 fights, Captain Hook, Hades, Sora's mom, you get it. Sonic Blade is however not useful against giant bosses, like any Heartless, Marluxia, Ursula, Maleficent, or Sora's mom. However, there is the background benefit of just being a bunch of attack cards, so we aren't helpless by any means if the strat fails us. Category 2, we get Sonic Blade at level 27. Now, grand assumption here, if we do 8 levels on floor 1, then 4 levels per floor after that. We hit level 27 at the tail end of the 6th floor, so yeah, about the midpoint, and it's just by virtue of leveling, so nothing fancy involved. As for getting the cards that we need, it's not the easiest thing, but it's not hard either. It definitely will require some stops at the Moogle, however, we do get free attack card packs from a fresh Moogle room, and if we're doing it on the 6th floor, we should have access to 7 different attack card types, meaning it shouldn't be too difficult to set up. Category 3, Sonic Blade comes with one really distinct and useful feature. It also launches, which gives us time to stack another sleight. It's also an incredibly fast sleight, and not just because it's like, but because it has a very short startup animation. Conversely, it has a bit of a delayed ending animation, but it doesn't really affect us 90% of the time. Category 1, Lethal Frame is useful against humanoid bosses, and it worked against 2nd form Marluxia. However, it missed a lot of its attacks, so it could probably work against some giant bosses, specifically like Dragon Maleficent or Darkseid if we can use a gimmick card to reach their heads. As for if it doesn't work at all, you do have some attack cards, but it is a bit of a pain to shuffle through and could leave us wide open or stuck in a prolonged fight. So not entirely helpless, but not in a good position either. Category 2, Lethal Frame is unlocked at level 32, so assuming the same level pace as Sonic Blade, we're likely to unlock Lethal Frame on floor 7. Again, about the midpoint of the game, and this game is mid. The sleight requires Stop, plus any attack card, plus another attack card. Stop is acquired from a bounty card in Wonderland, and that's anywhere between floors 2 and 6, pretty early on. This is a fairly accessible sleight, and as an added benefit, we can use any attack cards to fill the deck, and the sleight can equal anything. I will suggest it equal at least 10, so it can't be broken by standard cards. And while a Moogle trip is probably necessary, it'd mostly be for additional stop cards, more so than attack cards. Category 3. The biggest issue here in terms of survivability is that god-awful wind-up animation. The attack takes so long to happen that Larxene became Larksaw and Xion became Shigon. You can very easily be card broken before the stop animation activates, though I will say in my experience it doesn't happen a ton, but it still can. Quake and freeze. So this is an interesting strategy shown to me by user The Architect in my Discord, and posted by thewertle. Their video linked in the description. And as a side note, thewertle should be celebrated for adding more options to the community. When I'm comparing and contrasting these, it has nothing to do with like hating on them or anything like that. So I want to say thank you to thewertle for adding options. They should be celebrated for that, just like any other user strategy that I compare. Category 1. Quake and Freeze is useful against some humanoids, specifically Riku replica, but others like Blonde Rihanna and, quote, is that the Grim Reaper, end quote, not so much. The issue here is we're relying on the boss to both be stunnable and freezable, and that just doesn't happen very often. Against big bosses, it wasn't very useful, and it did leave the player helpless when it didn't work. Category 2, Quake itself is acquired from Atlantica's Room of Rewards, so at the earliest, floor 7. It requires a gravity card, Simba, and any magic card. Simba is obtained on floor 1 via the story, and gravity is from an Agrabah bounty room, so we'll have all the components by that time. As for Freeze, we have to defeat Vexen on the 10th floor, and that's pretty late game. Thankfully, we will likely already have its components, Blizzard, and Stop. Now, more Moogle RNG here for sure, which I don't foresee being much issue, but like a pass-around party bottom, we'll probably get fucked. Category 3, so this strategy is actually designed for perfect survivability. It's about stunning the boss with a high damage Quake, then freezing them so they can't retaliate, and then using Quake again with bonus damage from the freeze. It's really very smart, and when it does work, we're untouchable. This is more of a meme strat, but I thought I'd give it a try. And I don't know where I saw this, so if you know it, please link it in the comments so I can add it to the description. Category 1. All zeros does work on some humanoid bosses, but they cannot be fast bosses. This strategy is about taking our time to finish. Wink, wink. And maybe it's my reaction time, but I found I was getting my ass destroyed, even if I card broke my opponent. It actually fared pretty well against both marluxia forms, and as for giant bosses, there's no reason this strat couldn't work, but it's niche as bosses who slight spam, but only organization members and Pain in My Neck who do that. Category 2, this isn't a slight, so technically speaking we can do it anytime. However, it does require one of two things. Either a lot of zeros bought from the Moogle, or a few pirate enemy cards dropped in Neverland on floor 7 at the earliest. Now, given that there's a perfect guide by Derica for enemy cards, which I will always shill for because that man is a bigger hero than goddamn Superman, I say we should get the pirate enemy card twice, card to their video in the corner. Category 3, against slower bosses, this is just kind of having a normal deck, but worse. And in terms of surviving, while it can stop bosses from hitting you, it really slows down the boss fight, giving them more chances to hit you. So you'll live, but you gotta work for it. Category 1. Now, this strategy actually works on all bosses except Axel and Hades, and against them, yeah, you're helpless. But against literally every other boss, we'll make like Oppenheimer and blow him the fuck up. Category 2. We get the Fire card after beating Axel on the first floor, and Fire Raga comes with it. No extra effort required. As for Moogle RNG, it's basically a non-issue if we use it on the second floor. Also optional but helpful, getting Red Nocturne enemy cards because they wildly increase the damage output. Category 3. Now there's no innate survivability built into this strategy. However, Fire Rocket does come with a knockback, which gives us a little time to stack and do it again. And it is pretty high damage, especially when we have the aforementioned enemy card, which makes the fights faster. So, let's tally up the final score and see who won. Sonic Blade and Lethal Frame got 12 of 15 points. The thing with both of these strategies is, while Sonic Blade has more survivability and it's a little easier to acquire, Lethal Frame works against more bosses, but has the potential to get card broken during the build-up. So it's really up to you, but if you want my opinion, Sonic Blade is very demure and Lethal Frame is very deless. Quake and Freeze got 9 out of 15. It's a great strategy when everything aligns. However, when brought outside of that niche, it falls apart very quickly. It's best to say this strategy is not a jack of all trades, but definitely a master of one. All zeros with 10 out of 15 points. A fine strategy for meming, but with limited survivability, a prolonged fight, and not really being useful for every boss. Much like a blowjob from a cheese grater, I really can't recommend it. Lastly, Fire-Aga spam, 14 out of 15. This is actually the speedrun strat. Fire-Aga spam is both extremely accessible and very, very easy to assemble. Plus it has a high damage output and works on mostly every boss. The only downside being there is no built-in survivability like Sonic Blade and Lethal Frame. However, you can make the fight go so fast by using enemy cards to boost it that it really becomes a non-issue. And that proves it, Fire-Aga spam eats ass. Now, as a caveat, for bosses like Hades and Axel, you can do Blizzaga spam, or if you prefer, one of the other 4 strategies we talked about. Thanks so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed. Thanks again for 4,000 subscribers, and good luck beating Rechain of Memories. Subscribe and comment below if this helped. Have a great day. Goodbye!